In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at the canvas element. Now, the canvas element is an HTML element that we're able to write to the pixels of using JavaScript. And that's really where the fun begins. Now, a little housekeeping before we get going is we'll just put some style information in just to add a little bit more to it as we work with it. So I just want to start out, and I'll set my display to grid, and I'll set my background color, and I'll just go with a nice fun-filled hot pink. Now if we take a look, let's see, make sure our page is loading. Yep, loading. There we go. So we're in good shape right now. So we got the page, it's loading, and our canvas element, we're just going to apply a little bit of style to it. And we'll set our margin to auto. Now, one thing we're going to do a little bit different on this project is I'm going to create the element of my canvas with JavaScript. So instead of adding in a markup element, which I certainly could, I could just put a canvas tag in right like that and do it. But instead, to introduce some additional ways of working in JavaScript, I'm going to instead use JavaScript to create our element. And I'll just call it canvas. And now what we do is we tell our document to create element. It really is that simple. And I have to specify the kind of element I'm creating, and it will be a canvas. Now, creating an element is one thing. Then we need to attach it to our document, and we can also set properties of it and do things like that. And what I can do now is Document.createElement. So what I need to do is I need to get the body because, well, if I spell it correctly, because the body is what we can attach it to. Now notice I didn't create a variable to store a reference to it, the body, because this is all we're needing it to do. And now I can use chaining. So I'm now chaining append child. And the thing that I'm going to append will be that canvas object that I created. Now we can save it. And we'll see that there's absolutely nothing there. So what we're doing is we're using create element. So we can see where it's document create element, and then we can grab the tag. We can set some options if we wanted to as part of it. In this case, we will set the options on the object directly. And now if I look at append child, we can see it really is as simple as element append child and the child we're putting onto it. It doesn't have to be super complex when we do things. So we're doing much like what we see here, where it's document create element, document append child. Now, if I just say document body append child, so apparently we are able to, by saying document, it knows that there's a body with it. So we don't have to use query selector on body, but it works either way. So I can use the query selector, or if I just type in body, that works as well. And now if I click over and look at under my elements, I can see that canvas element has been added. And by default, it made it 300 pixels by 150 pixels in size. Now, if I want to change that, what we can do is just simply say canvas.width and give it a pixel dimension. I'll just say 800. And canvas.height. And I will give it a height of 600. Now when I save it, and let's take a look, we can see immediately now it has those properties attached to it when I highlight over it. Now canvases by nature are transparent. They don't have any inherent color. If we want them to have a color, we have to fill them with a rectangle, or we can fill them with an image. So if I wanted to fill my canvas with a color, I could certainly do that. I just need to figure out what color. But the interesting thing about dealing with a canvas is all of our commands related to drawing on the canvas refer to the context itself. So what I mean by that is we need to, well, don't want cap blocks on, const, and now I'll say context. Now context is going to be canvas.getContext. So the canvas is the actual element. The context are the pixels on that element that we get to draw on, manipulate, and do other cool stuff to. And what we do is on our context, we specify 2D. So that is the full syntax with that. And all of the links that I'll be showing up here will be put in the description on the video, so you can see those down below and go find those. So we can see once we have the context. Now often context gets shortened or abbreviated as CTX. So in any of the reference documentation, if you see where it says CTX, it's talking about the context. I like it spelled out. And you'll see right here where I'm going to be talking about drawing an image. So I want to draw an image on here. We have to specify what image we're going to draw. Well, that means we need to take a pic or create an image from a picture or graphic element that we have. And the good part about it is, now if I look here, we can say my variable name, new image, specify a height and width for the image. Then we specify its source. Now, if we're putting it in as a markup element, then we can use append child. If we're just loading it as data, then we don't need to do that, because then we're going to instead use the draw image command to draw that image onto our canvas. And that is what we're going to now take a look at here in a moment. To add our image in, what we can do is just simply make a variable. We'll just call it image. We'll set it equal to a new image. Now the height and width on this image, if I look at the asset that I have, my current asset is this picture, which is 1280 by 720. So I can see down here it's showing me the whole image as I'm going to work with it. So we can put that in 1280, 720. So now we have properly done it. One thing that we want to do is when we do this image is we will, very common typo, SCR, when we mean SRC for source. And it is going to be in my assets folder, and it will be 00140.png. Now if you use a different image, of course, your path name will be unique to yours. But I have my assets folder, as we can see over here, with that file in it. To use the image, we want to make sure it's ready before we try and ask for it. So I'll use addEventListener, and the event we're going to be listening for is the load event. We want to know that the image has been loaded. And once that happens, then we are going to call a function that we will create momentarily, and we'll pass in false as our final parameter. So we've constructed a new image element, we've set its source, and then we've specified that we don't want to do anything with it until we know that its data has been loaded. Otherwise, that can cause a problem when we are working. So to now use that, we'll say function draw, just empty parentheses. What we are going to do is we will tell our context to draw an image. Now we have to specify what image, and well, we just made one, so we might as well use it. And then I can specify where I want to draw it. Now, when we use draw image, just take a pause here real quick. So we've looked, there's add_event_listener as a reference. We've used that before. Here's the image element. And here's our rendering context where we tell our context to draw an image. But when we draw that image, we can specify what image and location, destination X, destination Y. We can also resize it on the fly using destination width and height. But we can also, if we so choose, copy part of an image, which we will be using this in an upcoming tutorial, where we will set our source X and source Y, source width and source height. So we can choose part of an image and then draw that part, possibly scaled up or down, at a destination location. So draw image has from 3 to 9 possible parameters that we can put into it. So we can see it comes in 3 different forms. We're going to just use the first one right now where we choose our image and destination. So to set my destination, I could just say 0, 0 for now. And now let's save this. And we can see it drew it there. Put in that image. Now if I go over the canvas, we can highlight the canvas. So what I might want to do is I could put a background color in my canvas. So to do that, what we're going to do is set a fill style for my context. So when I set the fill style for the context, what I am doing is I am now telling it what color I want to fill it. And we can use a lot of different ways of specifying colors. We can use RGBA, we can use hex colors. So we can use color names. All the same ways we specify colors in CSS, we can now use with our context here. And now I can decide what I want it to be. So one way I can choose my colors, I'm going up into the CSS, and if I click on the color, it brings up my color picker. Now this is using one of the extensions in VS Code. And if I wanted to choose a new color, so I'm just going to go through here, and I'm going to choose a blue color, so 105, 108, 255. That's what I'm going to choose, 105, 108, 255. Put the background back to pink. So we just type RGB, 108, 105, 255. Notice it's in quotes and the numbers are in parentheses. Now that sets my fill style for the context, and if I want to now fill a rectangle, I can choose the rectangle that I am filling. So I could fill the entire, well, let's fill rect, sorry. I could choose all of it. Now I know that it's 800 by 600, but if I perchance change my canvas width and height at a future date, I can just use those values. So canvas.width, canvas.height. Let's save that and let's see what we got here. And now we can see it drew that image over that rectangle. Now if I were to say I fill half the height, let's look at that. So you can see how I'm just creating a rectangle of those dimensions. But a common way of filling the whole background or flooding it with a color is we use fill rect and then the size of the rectangle. The fill style is whatever color. So I could set my fill style to one color, draw a rectangle, set it to a new color, draw a second rectangle, etc., etc. So you can get as complex as you want with it. If you're moving beyond just a single rectangle, you might want to start thinking about using an image asset because it's probably easier to maintain at that point. And now we drew the image on the canvas. So it's a good first start for working with the canvas. The next thing that we're going to look at in the next tutorial is how we can start animating what we are drawing on the canvas.